that's a long walk. So I've never, ever been nervous at a presentation before, but today I have my friend Lisa from college, and even worse, my wife is here. So you guys got to make sure and give me a big hand at the end so I don't take heat back at the ranch. Anyway, so here I am. I'm going to be talking about marketing in a cognitive era. So I saw earlier you saw some stuff on artificial intelligence. I thought that was great overview, description about what AI is. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to think about that and use that in your various marketing campaigns. But first, I think you're all well aware that the internet has transformed almost everything it is that we do, from how we take pictures, to how we consume media, to how we vacation and where we stay, to how we get around and drive around, even how we eat. It is the defining invention of all of our lifetimes. And yet, it is still just the tip of the iceberg. See how I did that there with my PowerPoint skills? Because it's only a tiny piece of what is coming. The exponential changes that will happen across so many industries and business due to things like mobile explosion and blockchain and sensors that impact IoT, and even things like cars that are becoming computers on wheels are truly going to change all of our lives even further than they've already been hit and disrupted by technology. In our view, and in some of the things you heard earlier, all of that will be powered by artificial intelligence. And in the world of IBM, you would recognize that by Mr. Watson himself or herself. We're not sure yet exactly what Watson is. What I'll be talking about today is how to actually leverage Watson and how we've leveraged Watson in different marketing campaigns. But the reality is, before I even get into what we can do in marketing, I don't want to minimize the power of artificial intelligence just by talking about marketing. So I'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in healthcare, which is the real progress we've made with Watson and what we're doing. So just a quick story to give you a sense. In our Watson Experience Center, when we take people through, we talk about this case where we had this young guy, young kid, 12-year-old. He was visiting Singapore, and he came back, and he was very ill, and he went to a bunch of doctors and couldn't really figure out what was wrong, and he was getting sicker and sicker. And so we have a bunch of partnerships with various hospitals and Sloan Kettering and things like that, Mayo Clinic. And in looking at this, we noticed that the kid actually was getting sicker and sicker by the moment, and Watson was able to identify, first of all, by reading every New England Journal of Medicine ever written in 10 minutes, and then by merging that data with the data from the different doctors' reports and insurance reports, including, by the way, the visuals on the handwritten doctor's message, which even humans can't typically read with doctors, as you know. And within 2.5 hours was able to come to a 95% accuracy and confidence rate on what the disease was, and it turned out to be right. And it was interesting, there was one little trigger in there where the kid had bloodshot eyes, which changed the confidence from like 60% to 90%, bringing into account all the other things. So it was pretty extraordinary. The kid was better in 3 weeks. And that's the true power of artificial intelligence, because we don't consider it artificial. We consider it, the reason we call it cognitive is because it augments human intelligence and doesn't necessarily replace it. So you need that combination of the doctors and the reports and the technology. It's the speed by which Watson can read all those New England Journal of Medicine and compare that with all the data that a human being couldn't do. But that combination, is going to change history, and certainly with healthcare, that's the way we've started. So let me talk a little bit about the approach to marketing in this new world. And we find that this model, it's very simple, if done properly, almost guarantees success in today's world, assuming you have a good product and good creative and all that. But the idea is you create experiences. That could be advertising, but historically that's been 90+% advertising. But it's really about utility, about entertainment, about content, all the different things to engage consumers that we have at our disposal today. And so you create those experiences, and those experiences must be made for mobile. They must be visually social, and they must be personalized, leveraging data. That all has to run through a system where you build commerce models that are appropriate for your business. So maybe that's e-commerce, maybe that's brick and mortar, maybe it's a combination, maybe it's 1-hour delivery. There's a number of different ways, Birchbox, different models of commerce today And you have to get that commerce model right that's appropriate to your business. And if you do that all right and power that with cognitive, you will be in a very good place. Now, that's easier said than done. It's an easy model. But if you go through and think about the strategy from that standpoint, you will be very successful. We've seen that across a number of different brands. So let's take a look at what I mean by made for mobile. So typically, what would made for mobile mean would be like, an app. You go to your agency or yourself as a marketer, and you'd create an app, or you'd create, little ads on phones and whatnot, which is fine. But, what we did as a kind of a classic management consultancy outlook is look at problem, come up with solutions. So we asked the masters, who's the client, what's the problem with golf? What's the typical issue that you want to solve? And they said, well, look, we have a ton of high wealth individuals as our primary audience. They spend 4 hours a day on smartphones, and we have no strategy to reach them. They're an old school company. It's been around 100 years. Like, what's really the approach? We said, what's the problem with golf? Unlike other sports, like football, where you see the snap, or baseball, where you see the pitcher and hitter, with golf, you don't necessarily see exactly what you want to see. You might like Tiger Woods. You might like Jordan Spieth. You might like somebody else. And you only get to see the hole that's being broadcast by CBS or whoever on that day. So what we did was put IoT sensors on 18 trees around the golf course so that you could gauge viewability of every hole and then stream that hole to your phone. So you've captured registrations, captured the data. You've made it highly personal because you can watch any hole you want regardless of what's on television. You could actually kind of picture it and see it both. And obviously, it's video, as we talk about visual. It's entertaining, it's utility, it's engaging, it's all those things. That's the kind of example we're talking about as it relates to the model I just showed. So as it relates to Watson, I'm going to show a bunch of examples here that I think will help bring it to life for any one of your categories, because I'll be talking about it from a couple of different standpoints. So when I talked about cars as computers on wheels, so you'll often... there's a lot of stuff's going on. Incredible innovation with automobiles, right? Electric cars and cars driving themselves. There's all this stuff. But at a more basic level, what we're looking to do for General Motors is build a Watson-powered navigation system. And this does two things, one of which it gives them a whole new business model potentially, because there you see Dunkin' Donuts, which I saw earlier, which is a great example of if you start your car automatically and it's below a certain temperature, let's say 32 degrees, and we have weather data because we own the Weather Channel, and that cognitive system will say as soon as you get in the car, it's 28 degrees, would you like a cup of coffee? Dunkin' Donuts is a mile away, sets the directions as you get in, and that would be a paid model. Separately, though, we're building the navigation system powered by Watson, so it truly learns your behavior. As a gentleman talked about earlier, what AI is really about is thinking like a human, learning your behavior over time. So things like you saying, play Lady Gaga's, song or whatever, or play Spotify, what you'll be able to say is play my favorite song, or play my wedding song, or play whatever, because over time it will have gathered that data and it will start to really understand information about you, and it'll be set up in a way that regardless of who drives the car, you'll get that information on that individual, similar to the way today, if you go into Netflix and you'll see your name and then your wife's and your kids and whatever, and then whoever you go into, that will be the specific information that Netflix has data on. This system will work similarly. So with 1-800-Flowers, I think this is a cool case. We built a personal gift concierge. So her name was Gwen, gift when you want it. And basically, when you went to the site, rather than just navigating different pages on the site, it starts with essentially the best way to describe it would be like kind of a chat bot where through voice or through text, you'd be able to talk to her. And on Mother's Day, we launched it. And, she asks you all these questions about your mom. What does she like? What colors? What kind of flowers? And even other types of gifts, because part of what they want to do is build awareness of the fact that they have more than just flowers. And then it would put to the forefront the type of gifts that Gwen would think would be perfect for your mom, and you would buy that, and you'd go directly in. They saw a big increase on Mother's Day sales on that date versus the year before with that personal gift concierge. I love this. So I used to be kind of a baseball player. You've all, I'm sure, read this. Boston is a big sports town. You've read about Moneyball. You probably saw the movie Moneyball. What we did was for the Toronto Raptors, take that to another level. We built like a Minority Report type room on draft day so that when they're drafting their players, they have far more information at their fingertips and quickly than they would typically have. So in the old days, when you drafted a player, and you typically would draft kind of the best talent, 5 tools, he's speed, he can jump, whatever, and you take a shot. It wasn't that big of a risk because the signing bonus was $100,000, maybe $200,000. Today, that signing bonus could be through the roof. It's actually a major financial risk. And the truth of the matter is a lot of these athletes don't become great not because you didn't have a good call on their athletic ability, but because of other things. They write dumb things on social media, so maybe they don't have the right maturity or mentality to survive in a big city or a media city like Boston where you'll get killed if you do or say dumb things about your friends, ex-criminal behavior, all that. So when you pick that player, you'll get all these circles and see that information on there about the player that goes beyond how high he can jump or how fast he can run. And you can make a decision on the fly. You know what, let's move him down to 6th. He's not going to make it in the big city. This is interesting. I saw somebody earlier talked about the idea of creativity as it relates to artificial intelligence. So Marchesa, the fashion designer, we decided to build the first cognitive dress with them, whereby they looked at trends all over the world in the world of fashion in places like Milan and Paris and other areas where people are really kind of at the front end of the best and most current fashion designs. And we created a dress based on all those trends so they use human creativity in combination with the trends in that creative spirit across the world to come together to create this dress. We also put sensors on this particular dress because we launched it at the Met Gala. And so she walked, Carolina Corcuva, a supermodel, walked down the red carpet with this dress on with sensors so it also could gauge kind of the social media chatter about it and gauge whether it was positive or negative. It was heavily positive because it was kind of a, kind of a cool thing to do, but generally speaking, that's why. So those sensors wouldn't necessarily be on the dress itself, but big hit, more of a pilot, something just to test out, but just to showcase how you really merge creativity with data in any kind of field that you're in. This is Connie for Conrad Hilton. We built this as a concierge in the Hilton hotels for Hilton.
Hi, Connie.
How may I help you? I am Hilton's newest concierge in training, thanks to a pilot project between Hilton and IBM.
Hospitality is a really interesting use case for Watson because inevitably you have people who need information. They need to find a restaurant, they need to find a park, they need to get directions.
We operate in a very crowded industry, so innovation is key. Innovation has to help solve problems operationally. Innovation has to help our customers. It's an opportunity to really delight customers in ways that they don't expect.
We're really excited about being able to build out the cognitive learning capabilities with IBM and Watson at the same time as we have Connie interacting with our guests.
It's much more natural. It's something that people can identify with. It's much more comfortable and something that allows them to have a more insightful interaction, actually.
It allows us to really serve people, understand what they're looking for, sense their emotions, sense their level of urgency.
To be able to take robotics and artificial intelligence and introduce it to the hotel business as a way of helping us operate more efficiently, helping us to delight our customers, it's a big dream.
What excites me about this partnership is the courage of Hilton to try something new, the courage of Wavelaser to build on the technology, so that courage is going to push us to continue to advance Connie. And that's also going to allow the humans who work in those hotels to go beyond that to help people even further by having Connie do the basic things.
Goodbye. I hope to be able to help you with Hilton Hotels again soon.
Connie, there you go. I should have brought her up here. And then another great aspect of what we're doing is actually building ads with Watson powering them so that you'll have very interactive ads in which you'll be able to, for example, we just did something for Flonase where the ad comes out, you can just type in or ask questions about the drug. Is it all right for my child? She's under 12 or whatever. She's got this wrong with her, that wrong with her, and it has a whole slew of information that comes back. It's also a good place actually for content. So if you're a financial services company, maybe you want to just give a wealth management advice or something like that. So it's a great interactive Watson-powered system, and that's available now for anybody that wants to create ads using Watson. How many people know what blockchain is or have heard of blockchain? How many people know what it is? How many people could explain it? So, all right, that's fine. Blockchain is right now the kind of most important technology amongst all transactional businesses and payment systems. You won't probably be able to explain it. I'm going to try in a bit, but I will tell you that it is at the stage that the internet was kind of in the early 90s. But as our CEO says, Ginny Rometty, says that blockchain will do for transactions what the internet did for communications. Think about how big of a statement that is. So blockchain is going to have a profound effect on all of our industries and everything that we do, and I'll talk about why in a second. But before I do that, I'm going to play this little video because explaining blockchain will be similar to this, which is this is a Today Show clip, which you might have seen. It's been popular and been viral, about Katie Couric and Brian Gumbel trying to talk about and describe the internet in 1993.
Back now at 56 past, I wasn't prepared to translate that as I was doing that little tease.
Oh, that's
that little
right.
mark with the A and then the ring around it.
At?
See, that's what I said. Katie said she thought it was about.
Yeah. Oh.
But I'd never heard
Or
it.
around
I'd never
or
heard it
about.
said. I'd always seen the
Right.
mark, but never heard
Yeah.
it said. And then it sounded stupid when I said it. Violence at NBC.
Yeah, I heard be around
big
or
fight
about.
up in the lunchroom the other
See,
week.
there it is. Violence at NBC. GE.com. I mean,
Well, Allison should know.
what
do you
is
say to that,
internet
Allison?
anyway?
Internet is that
Massive computer
right,
network.
the one that's becoming really big now.
What do you mean? That's big. How does one? What do you write to it like mail?
No, a lot of people use it and communicate. I guess they can communicate with NBC writers and producers. Allison, can you explain what internet is?
No, she can't say anything in 10 seconds or less.
Oh, Allison will be in the studio shortly.
What is
What
it?
does it mean?
It's a giant computer network made up of started from.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell us what this was.
It's like
You've
a
been looking in the
computer
dictionary.
billboard.
It's not it's a computer billboard, but it's
Right.
nationwide, and it's several universities and everything all joined together. And
Right.
And others can access it.
Right.
And it's getting bigger and bigger all the time.
It
Just
came
great.
in really handy during the quake. A lot of people, that's how they were communicating out to tell family and loved ones they were okay because all the phone lines were down.
I was telling Katie, and I've
But
been
you don't
talking.
need that. You don't need a phone line to operate internet.
No.
What does she know? So anyway, so I play that video because really that's the stage at which we are today with blockchain. Impossible to explain. It's going to be groundbreaking technology. It's going to impact every industry, but not that easy to just talk about in simple terms. I will say broadly what it is it's a distributed ledger. It's immutable. It can't be changed. And it covers all aspects of a transaction. So typically there's multiple players and steps in any given transaction. With blockchain, which are really just rails, technology rails, all transactions will be built on that so that everybody has visibility, everybody within that ecosystem or that chain has visibility into the same transaction. So things like it taking 3 to 5 days for a check to clear will disappear because what happens now is your bank talks to another bank, talks to a routing system, talks to an international bank. Now from the beginning to the end, everyone will have visibility. That'll check will clear immediately. Same thing with 30-day mortgages, things like that. But I think there's a better way that I like to explain it, which is really this is a tracking system. So if you compare it to social media in the way that Ginny did in her analogy, think about if you were on vacation, and let's say I was coming to Boston. In this case, it's Hawaii, but let's say I was coming to Boston. I'm in New York, and I wanted to send a postcard out. In 1980, I would write a bunch of postcards, maybe 5, 6, as much as I could figure out how to write. They would all be slightly different. I'd mail them out. And I'd probably get home before my friends even got it. So it was kind of a waste of time. And then in 2005, what I'd probably do is take a picture and shoot it out on an email again, maybe 30, 40 people. Again, that's just a copy that's being sent out, so anybody could change it. If they wanted to forward it around and do something with it that would make it different than I did, they could. I mean, hopefully most people wouldn't, but they could. And then in today's world, what would happen is you would just post that on social media. And the way that it's similar is that when you post it on Facebook, for example, it's not a copy. It is kind of a living, breathing picture. And if you change anything on it, the content, the text, or whatever, it will change everywhere. Everyone will see that change at the same time. So to some extent, that transaction will be the same way. Things like discrepancies will be 99% disappear. Huge areas of waste right now could be changed by blockchain. All the cryptocurrencies are traded on blockchain. So you've probably heard of Bitcoin and Ethereum and all that. Those exist because of blockchain. Blockchain is the underlying technology that allowed all those currencies to be traded. So as an example, this is not even with money. So for Walmart, we built a blockchain. They were opening big box retailers in China. And so when they do that, as it turns out, the biggest revenue generator in China is pork. Apparently the Chinese eat half the pork in the world. They eat more than the next 17 countries combined, so for your next Trivial Pursuit game. But anyway, so with that said, Walmart has to sell pork, and they have to make sure nobody gets sick from the pork. If a local retailer in China, if somebody gets sick from the pork, no one will be able to figure it out. The government might kick it to the side. Who knows what will happen? Walmart can't afford one person to get sick, because if one person gets sick, it affects their whole global brand. And it'll be news everywhere. Somebody died from bad pork at Walmart. They can't afford it, so they asked us to build a blockchain for pork in China, which means from the time the breeder is raising that pig till the time it's packaged and put in the stores, we are tracking it with blockchain on unique IDs, so that it makes sure that it goes through all the essentials, the equivalent of the FDA, the cleaning, the packaging, the manufacturing, all the way through to the store itself is tracked. And they love it so much that Walmart's now doing it with mangoes in Central America and a few other things, even within the US now, as we track their supply chain. So what we're trying to work on right now in your world is to really revolutionize the media buying system. So as someone talked about earlier, all digital media is essentially bought programmatically now. And there's some shifts on how that works from how advertising has always been. So in the salad days, some of you are pretty young, so maybe you don't remember this, but in the salad days, the agency got 15%, the publisher got 85 cents on the dollar, and even as we moved more to a fee basis, the agency may have gotten 10, 12%, but at least we knew how much they were getting and who the players were. It was pretty clean, it was pretty transparent, it was 3 players. In today's world, you have the client, you have the agency, you have a whole slew of ad tech players, and now the publisher is only getting 35 to 40 cents on the dollar. And those people, those companies that are in the middle aren't necessarily bad actors. There's just so many of them. They're all taking money out of the chain, and it's spreading too thin. Some of those players have duplication involved in them. They're doing the same things because they do other things, but you're paying the whole price of their product, even though they might be doing one thing. So Moat might be doing one thing, Double Verify might be doing another thing, some other company might be doing something else, but they each probably do it all. So basically, there's a lack of transparency. You've probably heard Mark Pritchard's many speeches, especially at the ANA, where he called out the whole industry on this and said, if we don't fix this, he's going to pull digital spending out of the budget and move it towards promotion or something else. So we are working on building a blockchain to solve for this with a giant advertiser and a giant holding company right now. Hopefully we'll get some learning, and probably by the end of Q4, we'll have a good handle on how this is working, when we hope to potentially institutionalize this across the industry. And then the benefits of that are transparency and trust. Data, we saw a slide earlier. You can use first-party data, third-party data, bring that in to help you with the targeting in a way that you can't today. There's what's called a blind trust in blockchain, so that the data is all encrypted, so you can only see what you are allowed to see with your quote-unquote key. We power with Watson, but not everybody has to do that. That's just for audience segmentation purposes. And smart contracts are the way that you set up any blockchain to make sure that your guidelines meet with what's actual. So I'm running out of time here, so I went through that a little bit quickly. The last thing I would leave you with is this is a revolutionary period in media, in advertising, and marketing. It's an amazing period for all of us to be in, even though there's all these challenges, because that's actually, I think, better. I like to talk about this story in the 20s. about radio to help you think about how to reframe what you're doing and how to succeed and potentially do something truly revolutionary today. When radio was first introduced, it was this giant, big, brown thing, right? It was very expensive. No one could buy it, and all it did was broadcast news all day because up till then, people used to get 3 newspapers a day. There was a guy named David Sarnoff who worked at a small radio company named RCA. It was the only radio manufacturer of its time. And he had a big idea to broadcast the heavyweight fight on the radio. At the time, the heavyweight fight was the biggest event in sports. It was the Super Bowl of its day. And his management was like, it's a stupid idea. He's like, people want to see the blood and the guts and the tears, and radio's meant for news. And he said, radio used to be meant for news. It doesn't necessarily have to be. That's what newspapers were. I think there's more to this. And I think it would be interesting because nobody gets to know about the fight until the next day today, except for the 10,000 people that go to the stadium, and they're the richest people. Like, they're the only ones that can afford it. Anyway, lesson number 1, he was persistent. He kept pushing this idea. Eventually, the RCA management said, fine, do it. In typical classic big company form, they'll say, fine, but we won't fund it. So here's your pilot. Do whatever you want. We're not going to fund it. And they figured he would either give up or wouldn't know what he was doing. He hired one broadcaster, and he aired the fight. He broadcast that fight. And the funny thing happened. All the few people that did have radios had a ton of people come over to their homes that night to listen to the fight, because this is the first chance they've ever had to hear a fight or to have any part of a fight live, not having to just read it in the paper. Anyway, what happened was radios exploded after that date. Radio became the broadcast medium of its time until television 30 years later and started broadcasting things like, soap operas and music and all different kinds of content. Every media that comes about changes a bit from the medium before. But what happens with business people, and this is natural, is that they just try to translate the old to the new. So, if we look at the internet today, part of what we've done is, we've made print ads into banner ads. We've made TV ads into video ads. They don't necessarily fit exactly in that manner. And plus these ad blockers and fraud and bots and DVRs on television make it less and less likely that you're going to reach anyone with using that kind of existing approach. So what I would suggest, and what has worked well for me in some of my prior roles and in the one I'm in right now, is to reframe your thought. Think about what's possible in today's world and think about what might be appropriate in your own creativity, because anybody can be the next David Sarnoff, and I'm hoping that a few of you in this room will be. So this is our time, but only if we make it so. Thank you.